So we actually have a variety of programs for the Esports Association. One is career readiness. So we actually work with the Career Center here to better prepare our association members to learn those life skills that they are going to need so that when they make that transition over to a career pathway.
Awesome, awesome. This guy, we gotta turn around. This guy wins almost every tournament we throw. I'm telling you. We gotta watch him live. He's gonna be something big. I'm telling
CSUDH Esports Association is centered in 4 domains: academics and research, community engagement, competition, and entertainment.
We're trying to make sure that the students are prepared for the future, that they understand the diversity that media offers now, and again, look beyond the traditional outlets.
They can gain fieldwork, partnerships, as well as potential job opportunities in both the higher education and K-12 fields.
We believe that esports is a strategy and not an outcome. Our association is here to help anyone that is willing to learn how to take your gaming skills to the next level through a supporting community. If you are looking to showcase your production talents to help support our esports teams, then this is the association for you. We host online and on-site tournaments that will allow our members to showcase their competitive spirit. Our association broadcasts out our competition and practices to entertain our community as well as our global audience. We believe that by joining us, you will come out of the association feeling transformed and better prepared to transfer your skills into your career. Join today and begin to explore endless opportunities through our Esports Association here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have another exciting talk session to get to. But before I make any introductions, I'd like to quickly share a couple of announcements. And first of all, and that is to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in, for taking time out of your day and supporting us. And just to mention too, we do have various social media outlets in our channel for you to follow. Please feel free to leave a like, a follow, and also comment. We thrive on your feedback. All right, without any further ado, let's get into it. Today's topic is titled Breaking into Casting. And with us today, we have PAWL. And please, Paul, correct me. How do I say your last name? How do I pronounce your last name?
So it's pronounced Capochi, but if you were in Italy, they'd probably say like Caposcia. But
Kaposha. Okay.
so either one works.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. And thank you, Paul, for being with us today. And welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. We've gotten a chance to chat a few times, and just anytime you can sit down and talk about the industry and have some fun doing it, I'm all for it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Paul, I mean, you obviously have a plethora of experience that we want to get into, but beforehand, share with us a little bit about your background. How did you get into esports and in your gaming journey, if you will?
Yeah, sure. So, my gaming journey sort of started like I've played games my whole life, but my esports journey really started in 2016. So I was wrapping up my undergraduate degree and I wanted to go for my master's, and I literally only had one class left to take in my undergrad. And so I went to one of the graduate advisors and I was like, "Hey, can I take a graduate course? Like, I want to start early." He's like, "Why don't you just take a whole set?" And I was like, "Okay, that sounds fine."
Mhm.
And he was also like, "Well, why don't you do a business plan competition or something?" I'm like,
Mm.
"Professor, I've never seen a business plan. Like, I don't even know what that is. What do you mean do a business plan?"
A business plan.
Yeah, I was like, "What is it?" He's like, "Just think of something you like and just make something up." And so I was like, "Well, I like esports. I like video games. I'll do something on this." And it ended up getting me second place in the competition I entered.
Wow.
I got to meet with a lot of really great like investors and people. And though the project didn't go anywhere, it sort of like started the snowball of me being like,
Mm.
let me go back to my alma mater and see if they want to start a program. Oh, they don't, but a school across the street does. Let me go to them, and I'll be a coach there. And then like one thing led to another, but it's sort of a real slow burn, and I've just never lost it.
That is so cool. Gosh, just make but I love what you just said right there. Make something up quick.
And that's what I did. Like it was it we talk, and I'm sure you tell this to so many students and people too. If someone says, "Hey, do you want to try something?" Don't ever say no. Like it was just there was no. I could have entered that competition and handed in garbage, and I wouldn't have been worse for wear. But it just so happened that what I did stuck. I had a really good presentation day. I had a blast with it, and like I made some friends and people I still stay in contact with. Like 5 years later, I'll still have people text me, "Yo, Paul, what are you doing nowadays? What happened to that business idea?" Like just an experience, and just keep doing stuff like that. It was awesome.
That's really cool to hear that level of encouragement of, you know what, just try something new or get out of your comfort zone,
Exactly. Like, what's the
and
worst
do
that can
something
happen?
beyond. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And even just like when it comes to asking, all you can do is ask. I mean, the worst case, you get a no, and then you just get a little bit closer to your yes, right? Or you get a little bit closer to the destination that you're hoping to get to. Super cool. So 2016 is when you got started, but something in the world of gaming, is that something that you did when you were in your early stages in life, or when did you really get started, like actually playing the actual games, if you will?
So I probably started when I was 5 or 6. My father's like sort of a tech junkie. Like we our living room would just always have a computer just in pieces under the couch, and then there'd be like keyboards, and like my whole childhood was just a conglomeration of my mother being like, "Why is this computer in here?" He's like, "Oh, I was working on that one." Because everyone, just my father fixed everyone's computer. And it's funny
Oh
when I
wow. Yeah.
even when I got into high school, I'd be walking home holding like every girl's Vera Bradley laptop bag because I'd be fixing theirs. So I sort of followed in his footsteps. But like growing
Mm,
up, there's pictures of me on his lap at his computer playing like Doom and Quake and
nice.
like Minesweeper and Solitaire and like that one space pinball demo that we all grew up playing. And then it just kind of went from there. Like going to the beach as a kid, I'd play arcade games. So when we like the PS2 came out,
Mm,
that's when I got into Tekken because my parents were
uh,
like, "Oh, me and my brother, who's a couple years older, we love Tekken." So they're like, "Oh, let's get them a PS2." And just like we just kept playing games. So like it started when I was really really young, and I've never stopped. It's been always part of my life.
nice, nice. So you had like, I mean, from what I'm hearing, you had a parent that really just fostered that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It was so much fun. Like I still remember growing up playing Centipede against my father, like trying to get high
That's cool.
scores and stuff. And then my brother and I always had like a friendly competition. We'd make our own like if we dig through all of our junk, we'll find like pieces of paper with tournament brackets of like different like Smash characters and stuff, and like
Nice.
Melee or whatever. We just always loved doing.
That's super cool. The manual tournament brackets, right? The manual bragging rights of, "Hey, this is, worthy of me championing," that's
Exactly.
that's super cool. That just to hear the grassroots, you know what I mean? It's so compelling, just to know how somebody gradually goes into a space like this. But again, casting. Now when you do commentary, talking about the game, when did you start noticing, hey, I have this level of experience playing the actual games, but now bringing it into life and now getting to talk about it? Was that something that you naturally did with other people beyond the casting level, or was that something you just kind of, threw together and just thought, gosh, I didn't realize I have something here?
So that started for me in college. So when I switched to becoming an English major like halfway through college. And part of me, like I always wanted to write. I didn't want to be a creative writer. I wanted to do like academic research or print journalism. So I got into print journalism, and a
Mhm.
couple of the guys that I was really good friends with, we all did sports writing. And so we all sat
Mhm.
down one day and they were like, "Why don't we just do a sports talk show? We have a radio station on campus. Let's throw something together." And so we would do a show. It was called Fourth and Six because we were on from 4 to 6. It was
Oh,
a really
nice.
We
Okay.
were really stoked. We thought that was like brilliant. People were like,
Yeah, that's
I don't get
clever.
it. We love it." And we would just we would just prep and talk about sports for a couple hours, and I started thinking like, hey, wait a second, like I can no, like even though it was traditional sports, it was like I just like talking about sports. And then
Mm.
as I got into coaching more, with like going to college in northeastern
Mhm.
Pennsylvania, some of the
Yes.
kids were like, "Hey, why don't you hop in and like, can we stream this tonight?" And I'm like, "Guys, like if you want it streamed, like I'll cast it too. Like I've gone to see the Overwatch League in person. I watch it
Mm.
on online all the time. I'm like, guys, I'll just cast it so at least you guys have something, when
Mm.
you play it back." And so I started doing it, and I was like, wait a second, like I really like this, and I understand the format just from watching sports my whole life and doing some talk radio. And
Mhm.
it's sort of all, like you said, just like a whole lifetime of experience slowly came together and became this whole other new thing.
Nice, nice. And just hearing like you were doing this to help heighten the level of understanding or production value for others, and how that organically led to you liking to do it and to do it in a more bigger scene too. On top of that, that's really neat to hear, Paul. So so share with me like what goes into casting. Like what is it that you yourself are always trying to make emphasis on when others are tuning in to watch.
So for me, I guess to speak broadly of casting, like we set up what our viewer sees. We're their guide to the action. So like
Right.
everything's on screen. You can see what's happening, but we give it context. What does it mean? What should you be looking at? Because there's just so much happening across. You can pick any game. There's so much happening on screen, especially like you think like Overwatch and League of Legends are kind of up here, where it's like there's a billion things happening on screen,
Right.
and we try to make it make sense. But even a fighting game, it's like, well, what does that move right now mean? And
Right. Right.
and so for me, like I approach it to give things context. There's a lot of really great casters that like bring in energy that want to like just lift up how everything feels. And so there's like sort of different approaches of like what's our first priority. And for me, it's always just been I want my viewer to then have context for everything that's happening on screen and to understand why it means something versus
Mm.
the other thousand matches they've seen before.
Right. And then share with me this, and this is a common question that I get, like, and when somebody's trying to break into casting for the first time, there's always this little hesitancy if they know that particular game title or not. Um, and if they don't, do they essentially, should that prevent them from doing an actual casting? What is it that you would say to that person, or how is it that you would approach something new, especially if you're given, let's say, a timeline to produce something?
So yeah, if you're given something new, and this is good because I've actually had this conversation a couple of times in the last few days of people like, hey, someone asked me to cast this new thing. I've got a week to prep. Where do I start? Sort of
Right.
thing. Um, my first recommendation is usually just sit down and play the game for a little bit. Like at
Mm.
least try it if you can. Just get because it gives you the feel for it, sort of the pacing of it, where there's dead time, where action happens, where things stop and start. You start to learn the terms. Like I'm a hands-on learner, so for me,
Mhm.
being in the game helps a lot where somebody who's really just like visually based can pull up a spreadsheet and be like, these are all the characters, these are all the
Mm.
things I need to know.
Right.
But yeah, for starting off something new, it's tricky because like you can watch professionals what they've done, you can watch your friends play it, you can play it, and everything else. And then sort of that first time you cast is when it's like you actually get the full experience. I heard someone the other day say something like you can't read a book on how to do push-ups. Like eventually you just have to try doing a push-up. And if you
Right.
can't do it, like you're gonna do it in the first time, it's like, ooh, that hurt my right arm. Like that's not,
Right.
let
Right.
me try it a different way this time. And it's sort of the same thing with casting. If you're trying a new game for the first time, you're gonna like probably hit a part where you're talking. It's like, oh god, I
Mm.
missed something on screen there, and it's like I know not to talk if I hear this like big explosion happen or something. And so like for new games, it's sort of just like want like a combination of like play it a little bit, study it a little bit, and just try to
Mm.
learn a little bit of the technical stuff, and then kind of
Mm.
try to put it all together. And after that first go, it'll be like, oh, okay, now I can kind of start to build from that.
Right on. And so what I'm hearing, it's like you can't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, no, no,
th-
fail fast, fail hard. Learn. That's how you learn. Like there's been so many times on there I've said a name wrong. I've said like I've probably even said the wrong game before. Like you just like load in the league and it's like, yo, these heroes are really cool, and it's like, oh, champions, Overwatch this week.
Right, right.
Like you just start, and it's gonna like even the pros, you'll be listening sometimes. Like I know we're both football guys. The amount of times like you're
Right.
watching an Eagles game and they're like, man, the Steelers look great here. It's like, what
Yeah,
city are you?
yeah,
Like
exactly.
you
Wait a
traveled
second.
to the stadium, you drove, you got
What?
off the airport.
Yeah, what colors are you looking at right now on screen? If that doesn't give you a clue. Um, yeah, I know what you mean, and it's because of there's so many different game titles, and even though the genres are pretty much, grouped together, that yes, you're watching on screen, but there's similarities to things, and I'm sure they kind of blend in.
Mhm.
And that's where that moment of, oh, I made the mistake there to call it champion rather than hero, or say the wrong game title, occur. But it's how to. So then, share with me this: like, how do you recover from that? Like, if you make a mistake.
You could, I think a lot of us approach it different ways. I usually, so like, um, so there's two really good parts to it. Like if you're with somebody that makes a mistake, you try to just do your best to either lift them up, or
Mm,
sometimes you just don't address it so they could just get through it and kind of take their own big breath and be like, okay,
right,
not a big deal, moving on. For
right,
me, like sometimes I'll make a joke of it, or like, yeah, I'll crack a joke, or like if I
right.
say something to produce, I hear the producer laughing at me, I'll be like, oh yeah, thanks for our production today, they're absolutely loving that. And like, so they get a little shout out, and I get to hear them chuckle even more at that, and then I get a good laugh. Because it's, if there's one thing about casting or any industry, if you're talking on air for, sometimes up to upwards of 6 or 8 hours,
Right.
if you're gonna mess up at least once or twice or three times. And so part
Yeah.
of it, like anything else in life, is just going, it that's sort of the inevitable. Not making a mistake is the exception. And so
Right.
it's accepting that little hiccups are just part of the job. Makes it doesn't make it any less difficult to be like you're sitting between breaks, like I'm such an idiot. Like
Right. Right. Right.
your producer kind of gives you a pep talk between games, but um, just accepting it's what it is. It makes
Right.
it easier as you do it more.
And let me ask you this, like, staying focused, right? Staying focused on there's just so much to, from what I see, in what the casters do, not only staying focused on the actual gameplay, but what the production or the producers are saying on the background, what your counterpart is also sharing. And then also you have that extra element in chat, right?
So
The
that
viewers.
I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
it's something we had. There was a big discussion like of like across the caster community on Twitter like a couple weeks ago, and all of us sort of kind of reminded younger casters, if you're doing like a really small or like a collegiate thing,
Right.
and it's just a scrimmage and all your friends are in chat, then like sure, leave chat open. But the second you start doing gigs that are like outside of like casting to just your friends and
Mhm.
circle, close down chat. Because what
Uh,
so sort of what happens is like, if your eyes are over here, like if I'm looking at my second monitor,
right.
I'm not present. Like I'm looking at them telling me I missed something, and then now I'm sad about it. Like I can go back and
Right.
review it later.
Mhm.
Um, and that's sort of where it's difficult, right? Because you want to look at chat, because sometimes a friend pops in, it's like, yo, you're killing it today, let's
Right.
go.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's great. But then even with that, you're still taking away from what you're doing. So like at the
Mm.
low, like I said, at the collegiate level, where it's like, hey, I'm gonna cast a scrim tonight, and like your whole dorm is gonna turn in, then yeah, leave that up and you can banter with them. But to your point, yeah, that added, like, once you start getting up there, it's like one thing goes wrong and chat's just like, oh god, NA production, what's happening? So
Right.
it's
Right. Right.
that's sort of a constant thing. That's like one more thing coming at you. And to your point, like staying focused, that part of that's like close down chat, like kind of let your producer do their job, you do your job.
Mhm.
But it can be tough to focus. There's just so much going on.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, I can imagine, and that piece right there is why I think, knowing best strategies and what you just shared is going to be conducive in somebody's first steps, right? Getting into the casting role. Hopefully not to make, that mistake early on, and hopefully learn from others. But yeah, and please, Paul, share with me a little bit more about like some of the games you've actually casted in the past and some of the events as well.
Sure. So I've done Overwatch, I've done League, I've done Valorant, and I've done Smash.
Mm,
Really, they're all really interesting in their own ways, and I've
mhm.
gotten to do some really cool events. So, like the first, like sort of big one I did was there was a charity tournament when COVID started called Battle for Bama, where they were
Okay.
raising money for it was like a I think for Feed America as like COVID-19 relief fund or something, and it was just a really great time. A lot of great schools from the southeast participated. I've done some charity tournaments for like Black Lives Matter, where we
Hmm,
raised I think like $700 for the ACLU. So that
that's so
was
cool.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then just like I got to cast the Scouting Ground Circuit playoffs for North American League of Legends. So
Oh, wow.
basically, like the top amateur teams participate in these leagues, then they're
Mhm.
put into this bracket, and then the top teams get to basically go to a scouting combine for the next level.
Oh, wow.
We got to cast some of the playoffs for that, and just what a cool experience. I mean, these players were just unbelievable, and the casters that we put together for this, I was part of a really great team,
Hmm,
and just the people you meet that you get to work with, because we all approach things so differently. Like
right.
just we talk about how we prep, how we do this, how we do that, and so like just so many events. Like I've cast in 3 continents, 4 countries, like 30 organizations, and
Wow.
every single one has one thing they do better than somebody else. And so like
Oh,
just
that's so
getting
cool.
to meet all these
Yeah.
people, they're like, oh, I don't do it that way. I learned this way after like I failed for the 100th time and went, I'm tired of this. It's like, oh my God, we never would have thought of that. And like I think that's been like one of my favorite parts of doing all these unique things too.
Yeah, yeah, eager to learn something new from the next team and
Hmm.
see what best practice comes out of that. And I mean, I could just imagine too, like if you're the let's say the person that's playing the games, right? The people that are on the team, and then getting a chance to see that VOD afterwards because they're really they're again, they all have their scripts, if you will. They have their role, they're concentrated and focused on the tournament or the match, and they don't really get to hear so much of the casting that's being done because they're focused on their teammates. But having to review that VOD and to see, wow, making the actual game come alive. Do you get any like thank yous afterwards or any kind of like responses afterwards?
Yeah, and there a lot of players are really good about that. A lot of times before I go live, I'll even message some of them like to kind of get their thoughts and like pick their brains
Mhm.
just to see what they have planned for the day. But yeah, afterwards, I mean, you'll get tweets, sometimes you like I've gotten
Mhm.
DMs from a player just being like, "Hey, I've never been casted before. That was really cool. Like,
Oh,
thanks for doing this. Or if we bring them in for an interview, they'll thank us. And a lot of them like pay attention to what we do. So like
mm,
especially when we did like the scouting ground circuit and things, some of the color casters and analysts would break down what the teams did. Like they do like
yeah.
3 or 4 hour streams just breaking down what we saw in a previous match. The players
Mhm.
would hop in and watch us, and like we'd be debating about whatever, and they'd be like, "Oh, I was thinking this here, but this is really interesting. Like I'm glad you brought
Ah,
this up because we didn't." So they'll even listen to us sort of as maybe not like as an expert or just even as another voice in sort of the coach room to be like, hey, the people that watched us all day thought this. Let's go back and look at that again. So they really do. They keep us in mind, and they really respect the expertise we bring as much as we respect what they bring and what we get to showcase for them.
yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like, you're not knowing what it is they're going to do so much. You don't have that, you know,
Yeah.
crystal ball to determine what they're thinking next, but you can kind of foresee or possibly even lead to that foreshadowing moment, which if they didn't do that move, perhaps if they had done the move that you were already commenting or thinking, that perhaps that would have led to a different result. And I'm sure that helps in contributing to strategy and heightening the level of competition, which makes total sense. Now that you brought that up. Um, and let me ask you this. So, do you do any like, let's say, like introduction meetings with any of the players before the actual game, or is that the actual time you get to first experience who's going to be matching against who?
It sort of depends on the event. So for certain events, if it's for an organization that just does like pickup games for League of Legends or something, you'll just kind of hop in and that's sort of your first look at them. But
Okay.
sort of the joy of doing some of the extended positions where you're with a season for the whole time, you'll usually get to meet some of the players. Some of us, like I said, go out of our way. We'll try to DM them before just to get a feel for them, and
Mhm.
they're really funny. Like they know why we're asking. Like, I'll be like, "Yeah, what can we expect today? Absolute victory, domination." Like they're just like it, it's funny because then we get to go on
Yeah.
the air and we're like, oh, I spoke like from one side we get a real serious answer. Oh, I spoke to so and so, and we can expect this in the mid lane and this in the bot lane. But I talked to so
Right.
and so, and he just said GG easy, and they're going to be set for the day.
You're right, right.
Um, but sometimes we do get to meet them. And it's really a treat because
Mhm.
these players work so hard. Like I've gotten to
Right.
talk to them at length. And I wrote a couple of things once, and they just talk about it's like, hey, like we're working 2 or 3 jobs plus this as a job to do what we do.
Wow.
And so when we get to sit down with them and kind of like pay homage to them to be like, hey, I
Mhm.
know the grind you're putting in. Can I get a piece of your brain here for a second? Because I
Mm.
respect what you do.
Nice.
They're so honored by that. Like there's such for for the people that like recognize, hey, the players really care, and the players recognize, hey, these casters really want to make us look good.
Right.
So many good conversations come out of that mutual respect.
Yeah, that's really neat to hear, that there is a lot of that mutual respect in the community to get an actual event off to feel that it's worthy of watching. What they're showcasing is all of their learnings and findings, right? All of their outcomes and output to what they've been practicing so hard. But yeah, I was just gonna say, like, that level of like introduction, getting to know who is who into the space, how that contributes to the casting piece, right? When you're actually, when everyone's in competition mode, you've got a little bit of prior knowledge of who's who and how that informs the casting role a bit, to help bring the match into more of a more inclusive way, so that way the viewer can have that understanding of who's who, because yeah, you don't see them per se always on camera. You get to see who they're controlling more so. um, so yeah, I bet. And I don't know if that's the norm in most cases or not, but it sounds like it's something that would be really helpful, that can be introduced if possible, is to do that warm handshake prior to the actual match play.
And I'm seeing it done more and more often. And sort of the higher up the ladder you go, the more you start to see that happen. Because even
Okay.
sometimes, unfortunately, like sometimes I'll hop into a cast and like I'll just be meeting my co-caster like 5 minutes before we go live, and it's like,
Right.
we barely even have time for our pleasantries before we have to put on our caster voice and kind of like people who work like customer service know they have to put on their customer service voice. Hi,
Right.
how are you today? Like we have to
Yeah.
put on our voice too. And so sometimes, but like in the places where we do get that pleasure, like we'll spend hours and hours, and it becomes so cool to think that like something with only so many controls can be so personalized. It's like, oh, this guy does this really interesting thing at this particular point in the game, and when we can bring that out and make that shine, like to your
Yeah.
point, we get to just add this whole other level to a broadcast, no different than in a traditional sport where it's like if you're watching Tom Brady, it's like what he's doing in the fourth quarter. Like if we can
Right.
bring that for the equivalent in an esport to be like, oh, so and so, this is when they start getting hot. Just watch out for this. They're gonna take over, and then they do.
Right.
It's so much fun, and like you can even tell like chat just explodes, and like everyone just has a good time. So it's really
That's
special.
that's really cool. So share with us, Paul, like what are some of like your motivators? Like who's those that are in the casting world that you look up to, or inspire you?
So for me, I think my top two would have to be Lemon Kiwi from Overwatch and Frost Garen from the LEC and League of Legends. I
Mm.
think they're just both phenomenal commentators because for me, like I'm not. You have brilliant commentators like Captain Flowers and
Mhm.
Quickshot and guys I really look up to, but I won't ever be what they are vocally.
Oh, okay.
Like
Okay.
I don't have a strong enough voice. I've got nasal problems. Like it's just like I'm never gonna be that guy to be like, oh my god, just like I blow out somebody's speakers. I'm always gonna be sort of um, more analytical, a little
Mm.
bit more concise, just a little bit like differently driven, and my voice lends itself to some other casters rather than them. Like a lot of my colleagues will look to them as like, yo, they're amazing. For me, it's like I kind of steer the other way. I like
Mm.
in traditional sports, I like the Jim Nance, the Al Michaels, the Joe Buck sort of calm,
Right, right.
cool, let the as the action gets louder, I should let that be the focus. Versus some other
Right.
people have a different philosophy that's also legitimate. So for me, like Lemon Kiwi and Frost have always stood out to me because they just have just such great personality on the air without being vocally just like in your face sort of thing, or like just
Yeah.
like above the action. They just stay cool. They've got like I just love Froscare, and her sarcasm and her wit is just unbelievable.
Love
So
it.
for them, I would just watch their stuff and be like, oh my god, like I'll listen to something and be like, wait, like I'll just be casually watching. Like I got to rewind that. Like they did like six things in one sentence there that I never would have even thought of.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, like, what is it that you're studying, when you're looking at the people that inspire you, and what is it that you would recommend others to study and look out for as they're getting themselves into either they're just starting or have already started and have a couple of experience under their belt, so that way they're always striving for more. What is it that you would recommend to look into or in study too?
So a lot of it for me, and like it's so funny if I look back on notes I would have taken 6 months ago when I first started versus the notes I take now,
Yeah.
it's so drastically different. So like for
Mm.
me, I like watching like so I usually watch things that I sort of struggle with, and we all sort of know as our own critic where we struggle. For
Mhm,
certain
mhm,
people, they might struggle with their introductions and their
mm,
closings of a cast. I
mm.
did radio, so for me, a lot of that sort of came easy because I had already done it before.
Right,
So if
right.
you think of climbing a ladder, I had those bottom rungs because I'd done radio. But for people that are just starting out and are like, I don't know how to welcome people to a broadcast, you would just sit and watch the start of every video and write down, welcome to, thank you again for tuning in. And you would just write down sort of everything they
Mm.
say. And so sort of those foundational things is where I'd recommend anyone who's just starting casting to go think of, how do they open and close, how do they welcome their co-caster,
Mm.
how do they let their co-caster speak and also let themselves be heard, and
Ah,
and
yeah.
like sort of how they use time and space, like just like if they have 30 seconds, do they talk for 5 seconds and just say, hey, what are you thinking about this, or do they say, I was thinking about this and here's what I have in mind and what are you thinking, and those are just so different, the kinds of setups
Yeah.
in each. And I mean, the thing with watching the professionals too is they've done it together for years, so they
Right,
kind of they get to make their own rules.
right,
But
right,
for us, we have to kind of chalk it down to like a little rule of
right.
leave them with 30 seconds, try not to be
Mm.
overbearing. And so those are
Right.
the sorts of things I still even watch for, where I'm like, oh, that was a really good pass. I probably wouldn't have passed there. I would have maybe like clung on for another 6 words and bored my audience, but they knew to just let it go.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, so key right there. That's true. And even like, it sounds like there's that level of ambiguity too. It's like you're about to meet somebody completely new, like you mentioned. I'm just kind of put in that scenario with you for a moment. You just met somebody 5 minutes prior to showtime, and here you go, and you have to have certain this level of jive, if you will, so that
Hmm.
there is a good toss back and forth. How do you do that? Like, what is it that you do quickly because you don't have much time that has worked?
So I don't think I got to mention it. So I did improv comedy in college for 3 years.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Cool.
so two of my big life philosophies. The first one's yes and, just say yes to everything, and
Okay. Yes, say
insert the
yes to
detail
everything.
in later. And the other thing is always make, when you're casting with someone, especially someone you haven't worked with before,
Ah,
always do everything you can to make them look great. Because if
okay.
you think
Yeah.
about it, if you're making them look great and they're making you look great, everyone looks good.
Right.
When casts get difficult, especially with casting with someone new, is the second you don't trust them. You're like, oh no, this
Mm,
person's new. Maybe they haven't ever casted before. If I pass to them, they're just gonna freeze on the air. And it's like, no, it's okay to worry if they're new, but
Mhm.
then you set them up and be like, hey, like, and like a really hard baton pass. I was thinking this. What do you think of this? And if they
Right.
crush it, you're like, oh, you hit that baseline. Next time I'm just gonna, and you start to build it, but you set them up always to look good. You don't
Right.
just toss them into the water the first question
Right.
and be like, yo, that was sick, and then just like assume they're gonna jump in. So for
Right.
me, I like to kind of like, and you can even hear it in the broadcast. Like the first game will kind of be a little bit more rigid because
Mhm.
I at least want to make them look good and make sure they shine. And then by the third game, we can laugh and have fun because it's like, oh, now I know where our baseline is. You know when to
Right.
hop in. I know your cadence. You know my cadence. But I always
Right.
just think what makes them look good, and that always benefits me because then they get comfortable. And that's where you get that jive and that, oh, they feel good, they look good, and now good things can happen.
No, that's awesome, Paul. I mean, what you also shared with me too, what I'm hearing is like even for viewers, not to be so quick to judge, right? It's almost like, hey, these two casters may have just met
Yeah.
5 minutes ago, right? Give them a chance and don't just judge them based off game one, right? Give them at least 2 to 3 and then see how they start panning out. And, even, just even taking a walk away and see if you're still listening and being able to be drawn without necessarily seeing the actual match. See if that still keeps your attention to say whether or not, oh gosh, I enjoyed the casting or enjoyed the match because of the casting that was provided. So man, yeah, I could see that being it's like a blind date. Like you have
It's like,
blind,
yeah, it's like so
you're
have you
just
ever done one of those like networking events? It's like a business
right,
blind date or business network, business speed networking. It's
right,
crazy. Hey, how are you? What do you do? What do you like? And that's sort of where you
yeah,
start. It's just like that's the other thing too, is I think at the collegiate and amateur level, people can get so serious about things. And it's like we're all showing up to put time into talking about video games. Like
right,
we're doing something awesome. We're doing something
right,
really fun. And the second we start turning into this whole, even at the pro level, into, oh my God, I can't believe they said that. It's like, we're all just here to try to make this better. And it's not
right,
always going to work, unfortunately. The pros have off days. They'll even, some casters just be, yo, I had a migraine all day. I went on the air
mm.
really sleepy. Like I was just saying, I had a cast the other day. I slept 2 hours before it, got up at 5 a.m. and I
Oh
was
man,
groggy. Like I won't even go back and watch that one because I'm like, that's a wash. Like game one, I was my buddy was half asleep too. We did our best. And like, sometimes
yeah,
it's when your whole job is in front of the screen, it's easy to change into something it's not. That it's also a job. Everyone
right,
has a bad day at the office.
right.
People, there's a reason most people show up to their cubicle with a cup of coffee and like just feeling down. Like some days it's tough, but we make it happen.
Right, that's right, that's right. I hear you. It's so true to remember that because yeah, it's even though you can have all the perfect script and the lines are right there and all you have to do is read them. Sometimes the umph, that energy may not always be there, but
Hmm.
still, you're there to set the wheels in motion, if you will, so that the show can go on. But yeah, and let me ask you this: are you, Paul? Like, do you take very detailed, descriptive notes, or are you more off the cuff? You just want to be more organic. Like, what's your preference, if you will?
I like having more organic. So for me,
Okay.
my notes are just the baseline. Think of like a Mad Lib, where
Okay.
in my head I have the framework. Hey everyone, welcome to. But I need that
Yeah.
name written because
There's the blank.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I need the blanks for all of the critical information. The fill-ins, the name of the event, the teams, the players. For me, it's also really important. I always make sure my tournament organizer, producer, I always make sure to have player pronunciations and their preferred pronouns. I think
Okay.
all tournament organizers or any student or person listening, that's just so important. People,
Yeah.
it's like meeting someone in real life. If like you asked at the top, you're like, how do I pronounce their last name? It's a sign of respect to the people we're talking about to
Yeah.
make sure we nail those things. And so I like those things I'll write down. But the other things are sort of up here. Now I know a lot of people, and I'm starting to do it too, where I'll script my intro and outro just so you hit everything. It's really clean. It's really
Right.
well done. Um, I'm pretty comfortable just having it go off the cuff, and most times I can hit it. Sometimes I flub it, but more times than not, I do it. But I definitely recommend anyone starting out have have a script intro, script outro, and kind of all your details. Like my whole second monitor would just be like notepads, like literally just
Right,
notepads
right.
for
Sticky note.
bullets or
Yeah,
yeah.
right, right, right. Oh
I
gosh.
I actually I put sticky notes for each team's name on each side of my monitor, and I'll flip them and I'll write who won what round on each side,
Nice.
so that like during the game, because when you have like a tournament and you're in match 6, it's like we saw them earlier and I think they won. Like there's no way you can remember your 12th team won 3-1 an hour ago, so you just write everything on your post-its and just keep rotating them. And so just kind of keeping the like anything that can help me. It's like a grocery list. You hit 7 things and it's like I'm not gonna remember eggs. I gotta same sort of thing. Like,
I'm totally with you, Paul. I still do this whole manual, sticky notes
oh,
on my
let's
desktop.
go.
So I've got the same method that you just shared right now. So I'm
At my
laughing
whole desk. It's
with
just
you.
it's just I've just got post-it notes everywhere here. Where
Yeah,
like, I'm just
same, same. It's something about writing it too.
yes.
Your screen space is only so big that could you fit another window and cram it and being able to, go through your mouse and click wherever you need to navigate. It's so much easier. It's right there and it's your handwriting, right? Which you understand on top
Yeah,
of that.
only we understand in some
You're
cases.
right, right, right. I'm sure if you give it to anybody else, they're like, "What is this chicken scratch here?" You know what I mean? Because my penmanship isn't the best, but it's like, "Oh, no, I get this. This is a system. There's a system to the madness here, but it will, come to me." So very cool that you shared that, because those are great strategies and best practices that it sounds like it would be very helpful to know, especially if you're entering the scene. And like you said, the organic piece, like I'm sure, for some of these great casters, like you can't plan a pop off, right? You can't plan,
No.
what amazing move or action is going to be displayed. You're hoping for it, right? In every match, if possible. But your reaction is what makes the audience gravitate, right? It's the whole did everybody just see that? You know what I mean? And if you missed it, you got to go and rewind and go back, or let's go to the replay.
Mhm.
But I'm sure you've had a couple of those in your casting career. Tell us one that like just totally caught you off guard, and you were able to be the one to tell that story.
During because there's two that immediately jumped to mind. One was I was when I was doing that battle for Bama, because it was really the
Oh,
first gig I'd done with like it had like triple digit viewers.
mm.
It was a best of 5 that went to the 6th map,
Oh wow.
99% to 99% in Overwatch. Like literally could not have come any closer, and just kind of celebrating that because and
Yeah.
at that point I still had like chat up on the side because I was just like I wanted to see what was going on. It was so exciting to me, and like
Yeah.
the whole time everyone was talking, and then the last 2 minutes nobody typed, nothing happened. I've never seen a chat just because
Go
everyone just
silent.
they went laser focused, like because we had people joking around, and credit to the audience,
Yeah.
they were really playful. There was nothing toxic. They were like, oh, let's go Oklahoma. I think it was Oklahoma and Georgia State or something,
Right.
and just went silent. And then at the end, everyone just like went crazy. And so it was just so
Nice.
fun to bring that. And the other one was I was doing League of Legends for the scouting ground playoffs, and there was a Baron steal. They stole an
Oh.
objective like right under their nose, and just like
Mm.
it was just like I had like for me because like in your head you kind of predicting like you were mentioning like okay what's gonna
Right.
happen next. I don't have the crystal ball, but I was like okay they're gonna nail this and then they're gonna win and that's gonna be the game. And the other team just came in and stole it. And it was one of the few times that like I just totally had personally miscalculated it. So
Mm.
all my surprise came out. I was just like, oh my god! Like it just was one of the few times I like, legitimately screamed because I hadn't. It surprised me. It was so well done. They went on
Ah.
to win. It was just, and it was really really fun. And those are the sort of things. I mean, like even from a traditional sports sense, those are the moments like I grew up admiring and loving, where like just these crazy plays happen. That
Yeah.
fight play in 2017, the Minneapolis Miracle Like you hear Joe Buck just screaming, "Diggs down the sideline!" Oh,
Yeah,
and there's
yes.
nothing else to be said. And for me, like that was a moment where it's just like, "Oh my god!" And that's it. Like there's nothing, there's any amount of analysis would never add up how cool that is.
Yeah.
See something you don't expect just be done perfectly.
That's super cool. Thank you for sharing that with us, because
Yeah.
it's the storytelling, right? It's so key to anything that is um, related to the esports world, but even in the sports traditional world, to that leaves us the impressions and the memories to talk about later. Especially for those who've never watched it, or are aware of it but just haven't had that chance yet, and then just think, oh gosh, if this is the experience, then hey, I had a good experience with it. Why not tune in again? So, question for you now about this. So, the players, right, that you get a chance to cast, have you had them on air with you and interview them, post game? And I'm just imagining there's just a lot of emotion there. How do you like help them sort of manage and cope with that, as you're interviewing them and asking them questions?
You try to get a feel for them as quick as you can.
Okay.
If you're lucky enough that there's a break in between and you get to like say hi to them off air, that usually helps.
Okay.
But if you're in an interview where you're talking and then you just hear the Discord ding and it's like, oh, so and so is here for the interview, and you've never heard their voice, you don't know what their attitude is, you don't know
Mm,
anything. It's just you sort of try to get that benchmark really quick where you try to ask something. Like I try to avoid, and I think just as good interview practice, I'm never like, oh, how are you feeling? Because you kind of pigeonhole them. Like I'll be like, this
mm,
last play of the game, you did this really awesome thing. Walk me through what your team was thinking.
mm,
And you
mm,
kind of channel, so like you said, you channel some of that excitement into, we just saw this really cool thing and we just
mm,
let it fly. And the other thing, even as interviewers too, and I had a good reminder of this a couple weeks ago, it's important to let the player like make them look good. So
mm,
we interviewed this one player and we asked him all these great questions, and it was a beautiful interview. He was really well spoken and
mm.
just really intelligent about the game. And at the end, he's like, "Hey, can I give a shout out to somebody?" I was like, "Yeah, of course. What's like, go ahead. Floor is yours." And he's like, "I just want to thank my mom. She doesn't get anything that's
Mm.
happening on screen. You guys make it happen, and she still
Wow.
loves what I do and comes out and supports me every day." And all like and everything just went silent. And I remember like I was tearing up because he just like, and I was sitting there,
Wow.
on the air was like, well, damn, I had a way to end this, but now I don't anymore. So like, and that was just it. I couldn't script it. I had in my head a
Yeah,
script outro. It was gone. I just said I had something for this. I don't. Thank you for reminding us why we do this. Have a good
that's
night,
so cool.
everybody. Because he and it was real. Like I've had parents of kids message me and be like, "Look, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to support them, and you
That's
guys
cool.
are that like that textbook, that lens, that
Mm,
resource for us to be like." Oh, like I know my son's name and I know if he did something cool when you say it, but other than that, maybe I don't know what's going on, but I'm here
right.
anyway. And that was such a really important reminder for
Mm,
me. Like I'm just like, let me build my career. It's like, no, these are real people. Like at the end
yeah,
of the day, we're doing something for people, and it was really
yeah.
special.
Gosh, that's thank you for sharing that, Paul, because that's so true. When you were sharing earlier that you had a supporting parent like that really cultivated you and your brother playing video games, I'm sure there's parents out there that, of kids or students, what have you, that don't have those type of supporting cast. And for some, perhaps, they treat this as, hey, this is their own little personal space, but in essence, to get to share that to other communities that get to see this as a production, as a spectacle to watch, they're able to understand a little bit closer of what it is one likes to do or loves to do. Um, yeah, I can't tell you too the same thing with parents that will say, So what am I watching?" You know what I mean? Like, what's going on? In typical, like in a game, right? There's objectives, there's goals to every game, and but just knowing what it is that this game does that's so unique, that's where, obviously a cast or somebody that does what you do can actually highlight and bring that knowledge to life. for new viewers that are trying to support their kids or family or friends or what have you. But that's super cool. Gosh, yeah, that would throw a wrench to anybody when you're not expecting that, and you're just like, oh, that's so true. So let me ask you this, Paul. Like, have you shared this with like your family? I mean, does your family get to tune in and watch you cast?
Yeah, so my parents will at times, though, sometimes tune in and like check things out. My girlfriend will sometimes watch things that I'm on, but it sort of becomes like any other job. It's like, oh, what are you casting tonight? Oh, this. I'll wait for playoffs. You know, 'cause early on, I
Yeah,
remember telling her, I was like, I was like, if I get to where I want to go, you are not going to want to watch me every day at the office. Like, it's just some days
that's right.
it's gonna be another day. But yeah, and like some of my friends and coworkers that don't know anything about video games are just like, wait, you commentate like on
Commentate.
to strangers and like what like to them it's just this huge thing, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And so I've gotten to share it with like my IRL friends where it's like they just see it as this really new crazy career that like we sometimes forget on the inside. Like I sometimes remind people, I'm like, we spend our time talking about video games. Let's have fun with it. Like
Yeah.
let's just be a good time with it. It is really cool, and I'm glad to see that more and more people are embracing it as yo. That sounds really cool. Versus hey, that sounds like a waste of time. Like they're seeing the how big things are growing, how much people care, and how much time we put into it, and they're like, no, this is really cool. I'm glad that you get to be part of it.
No, that's super cool. I mean, gosh, and so much level of respect for our casters out there. They're building bridges, right? They're the ones that are making that connection or connecting that dot for others to see what it is that people have passion in the video game world. So gosh, well, we're almost close to that time. Typically, this is where I ask our guests to take us home with some words of wisdom, if you could, to our audience. Paul, if you could share.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, and especially, so I quit my job right before I heard of COVID,
Mm,
and then I was gonna go into casting, and I was like, I have no idea what's gonna come of this. I don't know if I'll ever find a job. I don't know what'll happen,
mm,
and that's okay. Like I've gone through a whole bunch of different things the last 2 years, and every day it was like, I'm gonna wake up and just try to be the best version of me. I'm gonna give everything I've got every single day.
mm,
And if something comes of it, then awesome. And so like for me, I think the biggest thing I've learned over the last 3 years, especially with everything going on in the world, especially
mm,
today for what we remember for
mm,
today, with the things that are happening across the country and across the globe, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to
mm,
have down days. It's okay to wake up some days and go, "Yo, I'm not getting out of bed." It's
mm,
okay to have days that you wake up and go, "I'm not 100%. I need a hug. I need to
mhm.
I need to play Call of Duty. I need to unwind."
Right.
And me understanding, listening to my body and my emotions tell me, hey, you don't have it in the tank today. Don't push yourself. You'll get there. You don't have to drive yourself into the ground. You'll
Mm,
get there. I think is one of the biggest takeaways I've sort of learned. And we're such a hyper speed,
mm,
constantly connected. Like I play games where I do my business in Discord. I always have my phone on me so people can message me 24/7. I don't have to be available 24/7. And so
right. Right.
that understanding of let me make sure I'm okay first, and
Right.
taking care of yourself and setting yourself up for success is probably my biggest piece of advice to anyone starting. Take care of yourself, be the best version of you, bring that to everything you
Mm,
do,
mm,
and kindness always wins. Help someone else out and keep paying it forward, and good things always come from that. You might get somewhere being mean, you might get somewhere being selfish.
mm.
Kindness is always going to win. It doesn't matter what you do, something good's always going to happen.
Gosh, great words of wisdom. Thank you for that, Paul. Honestly. Well, you know what? I was going to usually close us out and give us the outro, but since you're here, why don't you do the honors today and take us to the outro?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, Ruben, hey, thank you so much for having me on, for being a part of this, and for having given me the opportunity to to speak about all this. I hope I helped a couple up and coming casters out there get some advice.
No, thank you, Paul. That means a lot. And again, we have to do this again soon. And definitely a special shout out to Yusuf Andrews, who is able to do this production and makes us all look good. And the best that we can do is deliver this message because, well, you guys are all in tune and are looking forward to more exploratory places to take esports pathways. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay. Take care, everyone.